punishments described in the Quran and the Sunnah, whether it is death, whether it is stoning for adultery, whatever it is, if it is from Allah and His Messenger, that is the best punishment ever possible for humankind. And that is what we should apply in the world. Who agrees with that? Allahu Akbar. Are you all radical extremists? Subhanallah. So all of you are saying that you are common Muslims, you all go to the different masajids, no way? Or are you like a specific sect, like the Islam net sect or anything like that? Are you like that? No. Are you like that? Please raise your hand if you like this extreme Islam net sect or anything like that. No one. Allahu Akbar. How many of you just go to this normal masajids in Norway, the normal Sunni mosques? Please raise your hands. Allahu Akbar.
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. Yeah, many here, it's normal, right? You're not a radical if you don't think men and women should sit separately. Allahu Akbar. It's normal for every Muslim to believe that adultery should be punished by stoning to death. Gays should be executed if they are gay. You know, this applies world round. We're not radical Muslims. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. This guy is Fahad Quraishi, is his name, is an Islamic speaker telling the audience that the death penalty to gays and lesbians and subjugation of women are not views held by extremist Muslims, but no, not at all, but by regular, moderate, every single Muslim agrees. And that's the tape right there for your own ears to hear. Now, it does kind of highlight a lot of what I have been focused on lately, and that is, okay, Hillary Clinton takes money from Saudi Arabia, $25 million for the Clinton Foundation, $10 million for the Clinton Library. Women are told how to dress. They can't drive. They need permission to go to work or to school. Marital rape not recognized. If you're homosexual, you can get the death penalty. And by the way, don't build a temple or a church in Saudi Arabia. That is illegal. She took money. She never criticized them. Millions and millions of dollars. Similar story in Kuwait, the UAE, Brunei, Qatar, Oman, Algeria, and on and on and on. Including, by the way, the government of Brunei. All took money from them. 94 Americans now have been killed by radical Islamists on American soil since 9/11. Our Department of Homeland Security forbids the use of the term jihad and sharia. It's too disrespectful. Should we focus in on the fact, well, our Homeland Security Secretary says, well, right-wingers pose the exact same threat as radical Islamists. Should we think about the fact that the U.S. has resettled nearly 750,000 migrants from countries that execute gay people? How do we know they want to assimilate? How do we know that they want a better life for themselves, a life of freedom? And while we're at it, why did the president give guns to gangsters and drug dealers and cartels and kidnappers through Operation Fast and Furious? Why did the president release known terrorists from Gitmo? We know at least 40% have gone back to the battlefield. Why did the president give $150 billion to the number one state sponsor of terror? That would be Iran. By the way, Hillary was a part of all this, part of Fast and Furious, part of Gitmo detainees being released, part of the Iranian deal that was negotiated while she was Secretary of State. She was Secretary of State when Obama gave Mohammed Morsi, when he became president of Egypt after the Arab Spring. She was all part of the idea, a guy that referred to the Israelis as descendants of apes and pigs. Well, he got tanks and F-16s and $1.5 billion US dollars. Now, earlier in the week, I started a discussion on this program that I think we need to get into more depth and detail on. And we had on the program a whistleblower by the name of Philip Haney, founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. And I was so impressed, but also so frightened and frankly disgusted by what he told us that I think we need to spend more time on this. And that is that he was ordered, after Obama became president, to scrub the names of Muslims that have ties to radical groups by his superiors. Remember, he's a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. It's designed to keep us safe. And that prevents us from connecting the dots. Meaning, if somebody is associated with a mosque or a group of people and his name's in a database, well, that might prevent a tragedy or a terrorist attack and save your life. Anyway, he's back with us today, as well as Rich Higgins, who is the Vice President, Intelligence, National Security Programs, former manager of the Department of Defense, Combating Terrorism, Technical Support Office, and Irregular Warfare Support Program. Welcome both of you to the program. Philip, welcome back.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right, I laid a foundation here. I want to start with, you're a founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. This was created in 2003 in response to 9/11, correct?
Correct, March 2003.
So you're a founding member. Now, in the course of your years working there, how many total years did you work there?
12. I retired honorably in July 31st, 2015.
I didn't ask you why. Was there a reason why you retired early?
Well, after 9 investigations, I thought it might be time to change my career. I was old enough. I was 62, so I took advantage of the fortuitous opportunity and retired at 62.
But you had other government service before that.
15 years total service.
Okay. So as a founding member, you began the process of putting together suspected terrorists in our homeland for the purpose of protecting the American people. You went to work with that responsibility every day.
Well, that was the mandate of our founding. That was our founding mandate, to protect America from terrorism and from terrorist threats. We all received a certificate as founding members from our first secretary, Tom Ridge. Nicely signed, frameable document, very simple mandate. Protect America from terrorism. That was it.
Okay, and you took your job, I think now, having interviewed you twice, once on radio, once on TV, you took your job, your responsibility very, very seriously.
Well, I maintain that if a man takes or a woman takes the oath of office as a person of integrity with their right hand raised, there's something that they can never do after that, and that's use that same right hand to cover their face and pretend that they don't see what's happening right in front of them. And I was determined, absolutely, not to ignore what I saw right in front of me.
Okay. Now, in the course of that period of time, you were a very integral part of building a database of people connected to groups that might want to hurt Americans in our homeland. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, it's very fair. I focused, my first organization that I focused on was the Muslim Brotherhood Network in the United States. The second major group that I worked on was a large group out of the Asian subcontinent, meaning Bangladesh, India, Pakistan, called Tablighi Jamaat, which is essentially an equivalent to the Muslim Brotherhood, but they grow up in a slightly different culture. They speak Urdu and Pashtun instead of Arabic. But other than that, very, very similar. They're like two large branches on a big tree, and I worked on those particular groups the entire time in my career.
Yeah. All right. And in the course of your career, when San Bernardino happened, and you finally became a whistleblower, I know you work with Congressman Louis Gohmert and some other people, you were told in 2009, when Obama became president, something changed in terms of your job description, and you believe that because of this, that incidents maybe like Orlando and San Bernardino could have been prevented had it not changed. Is that a fair statement?
Sure. There's two components in law enforcement that are essential, and if you don't have them both working together, you can never build a case to probable cause. The first major component is the individual. The other major component is the organization. In order to build a case to probable cause, you have to be able to tie the individual to the organizations. So obviously, you have to know a lot about the organizations. You simultaneously have to know a lot about the individuals that are affiliated with those organizations. That's what we call connecting the dots. And that was my specialty.
In other words, connecting the dots is key, because if you have the right database and you've built out the database over a period of years, and you connect certain people to certain places, to certain mosques, to certain organizations that are connected to terror organizations, you have a fighting chance to prevent a terrorist attack from happening. Do you know of any case, and I've never asked you this before, do you know of any case where you did prevent a terror attack based on the good work that you did?
What I can tell you is that I had multiple hundreds of law enforcement actions based on my cases that prevented people from coming into the country. That I can tell you with certainty. And I also
but I don't want you to just gloss over that. In other words, because of your, you remind me of the kid in school that's the smartest kid in class, and I always was envious of that kid. You had the information, you'd bring it to law enforcement, preventing people from coming in here that probably had the intention of killing people. Is that fair?
Well, I'll tell you, I was commended by the National Targeting Center for finding 300 terrorists. They put it in writing. The letter that I was received when I was during my time of duty at National Targeting Center is in the back of the book. See something, say nothing. Because I understand that people may have a hard time actually believing what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So I tried to address that, to remedy, and put the letter in the back of the book. And it says right there, I received credit for finding 300 terrorists. And I'd like to ask a question. How many terrorists were involved in the Orlando? Maybe one or two, maybe. How many in San Bernardino? Two, maybe three. How about Chattanooga? One. How about Fort Hood? One. How about Boston bombing? Two, maybe three. I was given credit for finding 300 of them.
Not only are you smart, but you're humble. All right, when we come back, I want to get into what happened and what changed in 2009. Also, Rich, I know you're being very patient. You're a big part of this story. We're going to bring you in here. I just want to set the foundation. So I appreciate your patience as well. This is just too important to gloss over. If you're just joining us, you're missing a lot here. We have Philip Haney, founding member of the Department of Homeland Security. Also, Rich Higgins, Vice President, Intelligence, National Security Programs, former manager with the Department of Defense, Combating Terrorism, Technical Support Office, and Irregular Warfare Support Program. All right, Philip, I want you to finish your story. So your job is to connect the dots. Your job is to find terrorists. You're credited with finding over 300 terrorists that want to commit harm on our homeland. Founding member, Department of Homeland Security. Now, 2009 comes, and you are given an edict. You are given an order. What is it?
To put it in context, we have to keep in mind that this was a year after the conclusion of the largest terrorism trial in American history, the Holy Land Foundation trial. 102 convictions of 5 individuals connected to the Muslim Brotherhood for support of Hamas.
That's the case, by the way, that the group CARE was an unindicted co-conspirator. I want to just interrupt you. What do you think of that group CARE?
CARE was founded by members of Hamas here in the United States. That's an irrefutably proven fact. History does not change that fact. Political correctness might try to. Statements in the media might attempt to. But the fact is, it's
you don't trust them, do you?
Proven.
You don't trust them.
I know what they really believe. That's my specialty, the Muslim Brotherhood.
Then let me ask, before I finish this, you're raising too many good questions here. The Muslim Brotherhood, it was formerly headed up in the Middle East by a guy by the name of Mohammed Morsi, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And Mohammed Morsi became the president of Egypt after the Arab Spring, correct?
There are several individuals. They're called Supreme Guides, yes, but they're the top of the organization.
Right. Mm-hmm. And when he became the head of Egypt, the president of Egypt, Obama and Hillary Clinton gave him F-16s and tanks and weapons. Were they given that, and money? Were they given that to a terrorist, the guy that once referred to the Israelis as descendants of apes and pigs?
Well, let's look at their motto. I don't have to surmise. I just say what their motto says. That dying for the fi sabil Allah in the cause of Allah is their highest aspiration, and that the Quran is their constitution, and that Muhammad is their prophet. Their other part of their motto says "Why Ayuda," which is derived from Quran 860, and it means prepare to terrify them with weapons of war. That's right in their icon of their motto. And this administration insists that these people are moderate. So this
let me
is
bring in.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm so glad you say that, but I have to be fair to Rich Higgins here. Before I get back to Philip, Rich, tell me your experience and related to what Philip is just saying here.
Well, I think the most important point to note is Phil is not alone in what happened to him. We saw across the national security apparatus in 2011 a directed purge out of the Department of Defense, the intelligence community, the law enforcement community, the Department of Justice, the State Department, as well as Homeland Security, where Phil was. And right now what we're seeing is the catastrophic consequences of that.
When you say a purge, you mean scrubbing the names that people like Phil and yourself accumulated since the founding of the Department of Homeland Security, and maybe even prior.
I think it's more holistic than that, Sean. I think it's more dangerous than that, because what they're actually scrubbing is any references to the Islamic doctrine that would allow us to define who is or is not actually one of our enemies. So when somebody says they're a Muslim brother or a member of one of these other subversive groups, we today in the United States still don't have the Muslim Brotherhood classified as a threat organization. They're operating with impunity right now today. We saw Muslim Brotherhood affiliated personnel on TV at the response to the Orlando massacre. From inside the system,
but again, I want to just give a timeline here. This all changed when Obama became president. This is an Obama dictate.
The way I describe it to people is, during the Bush administration, immediately following 9/11, we would have, I'll call them Brotherhood affiliated, and I'll put affiliated in quotes, personnel, maybe at the table or influencing decisions. During the Obama administration, they seemed to be making the decisions.
Wait a minute. You're saying to me that people that had sympathy for radicals were making Homeland Security decisions?
I'm saying that when you look at the deliberate decision-making process of the United States government as it relates to radical Islam, that deliberate decision-making process is controlled by the Muslim Brotherhood. And the way they control it is by prohibiting U.S. national security personnel from ever developing an understanding to the level that Phil has it. And a point would be to hand this back to you, Phil. Phil, where did you learn what you know about Islam and the Muslim Brotherhood?
It started on the ground when I worked in the Middle East as an entomologist. I would deliberately live away from the normal tourist areas and study the language and culture there on the ground. And then I worked with people who were in the field, farmers. I studied Quranic Arabic language, culture. So when 9/11 came, it wasn't theoretical for me. I'd already seen it up close and personal. And so I went right at it.
Can I ask you both this question? To what extent, we always struggle with the distinction between radical Islamists and Muslims and people that are peaceful and want to pursue their religion. I've read the Quran. I understand the literal interpretation. Based on your experience, Phil, and I ask you, Rich, the same question. Phil first. What percentage do you believe of Muslims in the Middle East are radicalized?
I'd like to address it in a slightly different way. The way to ask the question is, what percentage of Muslims believe in Sharia law?
Okay.
By the way,
I love when I'm totally corrected by a much smarter guest on this subject and ask my question for me. Go ahead. You ask the question and answer it. Go ahead.
The gravitational force of the global Islamic movement is not radicalization. The gravitational force of the global Islamic movement is implementation of Sharia law. And the attempts to do that are tactical. And some of those tactical attempts, or some of those tactics, are identified arbitrarily as radical. But it's actually all part of a bigger effort to make Sharia law implemented everywhere on the face of the earth. And there's a spectrum of tactics. Some are calm, persuasive, other ones are violent, and we call them radical. But it's actually all the same gravitational force. It just depends on how close to the gravity you are.
And what you're describing, though, is, so when Hillary takes money from all these countries that practice Sharia law, she's really taking it from a group of people that want to influence the government of the United States of America, and they're at least buying her silence at the very least. Is that a fair statement?
Well, one of the things I learned when I was active duty doing vetting of Saudi students coming in on what we call F1 student visas is that their primary purpose for being here in the United States was not to get a degree. It was to promote Islam. And they were reminded of that in every class, every group that came in every year at the Muslim Student Association groups around the country, the different organizations. Remember why you're here. It's to promote and represent Islam in the United States of America.
But the goal is a worldwide dominating caliphate with Sharia law as the law of the world.
Yes, it's in Quran 2, verse 190. through 193. That is the most concise explanation of the global strategic and tactical goals of Islam that you'll find anywhere in the Quran. It tells you exactly what they intend to do and how they intend to go about it in 3 or 4 very concise verses, Quran 2, 190 through 193.
Rich, do you agree with that assessment?
I agree with that assessment, Sean. And to bring it back to the point earlier about the United States being put to work fulfilling the objectives of the Brotherhood, the Brotherhood was killed en masse by Saddam Hussein. We removed him. Gaddafi killed the Muslim Brotherhood. We removed him. We asked Mubarak to go. Ben Ali, Saleh. We are their instrument because they control our deliberate decision-making process. And then in reaction to the terrorist attack here, which I'm not sure the Muslim Brotherhood wants to actually have happen here, I think they'd much rather see us sort of passively managed rather than awoken like we are right now, and people, again, for the past week at least, have had their attention on this. We see the left in the United States doing the job of our enemy. The left is the tool they're using to have thought and speech control.
Right, let me ask a broader question. We've watched the Islamization of Europe. Even Great Britain has 88 separate sharia courts. We see the influx of refugees. We know in this country our top intelligence officials are warning that refugees will be infiltrated by ISIS and other terrorist groups, but yet the president, Hillary Clinton, insists anyway. My question is Europe gone? Philip, is Europe in the process of changing dramatically? And has it been Islamicized, if you will?
Well, let's just put it in a perspective of history. These kind of things have happened before. Over the course of the 1,400 years that Islam has existed, there was a time when they swept all the way across North Africa and conquered every single country we know of today in North Africa. Then crossed into Europe, crossed the Straits of Gibraltar in the year 711, and they were only stopped by Charles Martel at the Battle of Tours in 732, exactly 100 years after Muhammad died, way back over there in Saudi Arabia. So we've seen these precedents before. Then historical events like the Siege of Vienna twice, the fall of Istanbul, or the fall of Constantinople 500 years ago, and the Barbary pirate slave trading operation that went on for 1,000 years in the Mediterranean basin. That's when America encountered jihad, when they encountered slave traders in the Mediterranean. That's why they built a ship called the USS Constitution to essentially defend the Constitution of the United States. And that's why the Marine Corps song, From the Halls of Montezuma to the Shores of Tripoli, has that in there. The USS Constitution sailed into the Mediterranean and openly confronted the Barbary pirates and bombarded their fortress in Tripoli and repatriated a crew of men from a ship called the Philadelphia. That's history. And we've seen this over and over and over again through time. Most of it never came up on our radar. And we're not even talking about
I hate to interrupt your thought process. Do you believe that this is now growing into a force that is at a magnitude of force that is so great that there is a coming worldwide battle over this advancing caliphate? In other words, are we able to stop it, nip it in the bud, or is it inevitable now that this is not going to end well?
We have a strong defense. We have a solid foundation to stand on if we will avail ourselves of it. It's called the U.S. Constitution. The geniuses, our founding fathers, created a checks and balance form of government that's designed to protect us from lawless or unilateral decisions that are being made now here in our country vis-a-vis foreign and domestic counterterrorism policy. What we need is a political revival to go back to the U.S. Constitution and begin implementing the provisions that were built into that Constitution to protect us from these kind of threats. This is the first and foremost obligation of the U.S. government, protect its citizens from threat, both foreign and domestic. And I can also tell you that if we don't address it voluntarily, with courage and conviction now, we're going to be addressing it involuntarily, and that we're going to be at a much greater disadvantage than we already are right now. But no, I
am going to tell Donald Trump about both of you and get this tape to him. Rich, I want to give you the last 45 seconds we have. I know I spent a little more time on Phil today, but not by design, but I want you to give your final thoughts here.
Sean, I was learning as much as you are. The man's brilliant. I just think it's really important to understand that every time one of these attacks happens in the United States, you see the left, in unison with the Muslim Brotherhood, immediately respond with direct attacks on the First and Second Amendment. That is not by accident, and we're going to continue to see that. And I think the American people need to be aware of that. They need to see it as it's happening, and they need to call their politicians on it. Last thing is, I think, as we move forward on the Europe question, I've watched for the past 20 years as Europe has slipped, slowly circling the drain. I think they're not going to escape without a major conflagration of some sort, whether that's revolution, counter-revolution, the far-right movement. It's not going to be pretty, and I'll just leave that as my assessment for now.
All right, I want to thank you both. You both are real American heroes to me. I thank you for all the work you did and the courage in speaking out. I'm sure you've taken a lot of heat for it. I know you have, and we are not going to end this discussion here. We will continue it because I think it's imperative that people fully understand exactly the nature of the threat that you're both describing and fought against for all these years. Thank you both.
Hey, Sean, thank you. I'll continue to Tell the Truth campaign.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Phil, you're listen, I would be best friends with you in school because you're the smartest kid in the class, and I'd want a copy on your paper. But seriously, you were. I really wouldn't. I just ask you to help me study. That's all.
Well, that I
would do. I know you would. All right. Thank you for all you've done. We're going to be in touch. Thank you.
I'm Ami Horowitz, and